Hello and welcome to Connected, episode 297. It's made possible this week by our sponsors, Smile, Hello, and Zojo. My name is Stephen Hackett, and I am joined by Mr. Myke Hurley.
Hi, Stephen Hackett.
And there's no Federico this week.
No, he's on vacation.
He is.
They can have those in Italy, so he's having one. Mm-hmm. And we hope that he is enjoying it.
I thought, I was like, how would I do a vacation? And I think mine would just be like, let's go hang out in the garage.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. So, like, me and Adina were talking about this today, and she's like, "Oh, once everything's over in June, right? WWDC's all done. You should do it." And I'm kind of just like, but I wouldn't. Like, I would just be at home. I wouldn't be able to stop doing most of the things that I'm doing anyway. So,
right.
It's kind of there isn't really that much of a benefit to me. Mm-hmm. But there you go.
So it is obviously a traumatic time in the world, and we did want to take a moment before we get in to the show to address this. Myke and I, Relay FM, we support the protest happening in the U.S. and elsewhere. There's no world in which the evil of racism should be tolerated. Absolutely not. Change is long overdue in this country and others. There's no differing opinions here when it comes to racism and police brutality. There's only really one side to this argument, right? It's an evil.
With a lot of political things, right? You can say, well, I don't believe this, but I know other people do, and people are entitled to their own opinion. But this isn't one of those situations, right? Like, there is no other opinion when it comes to racism. You either think that is a terrible thing that shouldn't exist, or that's it. Like, there's no counter argument to this point, right?
Agreed. And look, you may be upset that we're talking about this, and we would urge you to try to understand why that's upsetting to you, because it's something that we all need to address and to work together to make better. It takes all of us. So we have a resource in the show notes. Myke, do you want to talk about this real quick?
Yeah, I've seen this. There's a lot of resources, right, that we've all seen going around, but I've seen this one website going around called blacklivesmatters.card.co, and what I like about this resource is it's lots of resources collected into one. So whether you want to donate, whether you want to sign petitions, whether you want to get resources to educate yourself, or whatever it is you're looking for, including resources for other countries now that are getting involved in these protests in more significant ways. Mm-hmm. This one I found to be very useful for me. Like, initially, I was struggling to find somewhere I could donate because a lot of donation funds don't allow non-US participants to donate to them. But through this website, I was able to not only find a place, but also find like a workaround to be able to actually make a donation to a cause that I believed in. So this is a good place to start if you don't know where to start. So I would recommend checking this one out, and it'll be in our show notes.
Depending on where you are, they may also be local organizations working. That's one way my wife and I have gotten involved, is with some local folks. So anyways, we wanted to address that. We did not want this to go by without doing that. So
with coronavirus, we're all in it. We're all experiencing it, right? And there is no second viewpoint on it, right? No one's arguing it. No one's arguing, well, I was going to say no one's arguing it that it exists, but I think there are people now, so you can kind of ignore that. Coronavirus is happening and it's horrible, and we need our world leaders to make the right decisions. And Black Lives Matter is a real thing, and it does matter. And I hope that everyone pays more and more attention to this now. And like, educate yourself, surround yourself by people. I've been paying more attention to following more Black people online. I realized that I was not following enough Black people, so I am looking to fix that. One of the great things is I follow a lot of people that retweet people with lists. It's like, great, I found a bunch of new people to add to my feed, so I can try and understand more, right? Like we all are, but I'm working on some things as well for myself right now that I want to do to try and be able to contribute more. So I'll be talking about stuff as we all will over the weeks to come.
Well, should we do some follow-up?
Oh, please.
We spoke last time about Federico leaving Apple Arcade. Now he has left the show. just for a week. He saw that I'm going to talk about the Mac later, and he said he wasn't coming. So take that as what you will. So anyways, we were curious what would happen if your Apple Arcade subscription lapses and you still have those applications on your device. So Joe sent us what happens on the phone. The apps are still on your home screen, and you tap them, and basically you get a pop-up that says, hey, this is Apple Arcade. You can play a bunch of games. Here's how you sign up. So I think pretty well done. Doesn't kick you to the App Store.
Nor does it delete them. Like, I actually think this is the kind of the best case scenario. So, like, the apps icons stay on your phone in case you didn't know, like maybe your credit card expired or something, or like you canceled it by accident. You weren't sure what you were paying for. So I actually kind of like, I like that this is the response where it just pops up and it's like, look, if you want to play this, you can pay. And I would assume it saves your progress as well, would be my assumption.
I would hope so.
That'd be great. Yeah.
And then Logan sent in what happens on the Mac, which is far less pretty. So basically you open the app and it instead launches the App Store, the Mac App Store, and then basically that same view comes in the App Store saying, hey, you're not signed up, here's how you do it. So
yeah, there's like some weird, that's interesting, right? Like some weird like hole being poked in there. Like it's like clearly it can't work without the App Store, but like on the iPhone, the App Store is clearly more integrated. Right?
Yeah.
That's funny. That's really funny.
Which is fine by me. I don't want it more integrated on the Mac than it is. So yeah, it seems like it sort of degrades pretty gracefully if you give up your subscription. I have some bad news.
Oh, okay.
Myke.
Good. That's what I want.
I've misplaced my Apple Pencil.
Okay.
Like in a way that I think it's gone. I don't know quite when it happened. I did this video of like what's in my bag, and so I taken everything basically all apart, and I think it disappeared about that time. But I'm kind of like, I mean, I'm bummed because it was expensive, right? And that I don't know where it is, but I haven't really missed it in terms of use.
But it's got to be somewhere in your home or studio.
Right. I haven't gone anywhere else, but I don't know.
Is it hidden in your bag somewhere?
I don't know. Maybe it's in like a deep pocket that I haven't found yet. But anyways, but it did make me think about my sort of Apple Pencil usage, and I realized that basically it's zero. Like I'll use it to navigate things sometimes, but with the Magic Keyboard, the trackpad has just taken over for all that. And I'm not an artist in the sense that I draw or sketch or anything on the iPad. I don't like handwriting on the iPad.
Give yourself some credit. You could be an artist if you want to be.
I did spend 2 years in art school, and then I changed my major. So I feel like I know more than most that it's not for me.
What were you doing in art school? I knew you then, right?
No. This would have been in 2004, 2005, 2006, before we met.
Journalism school was what I remember you doing.
I was in art school, and then I took a drawing class, and it was terrible. I was studying graphic design, but I had to take traditional art classes, and I was really bad at them. So I changed my major 2 years in, which is not what you should do. If you're getting ready to go to college, or you're thinking about going to college, maybe just don't declare your major until you're super sure, because you basically restart the clock on a bunch of classes you need. Anyways, it wasn't for me. But I did want to talk a little bit about the Apple Pencil and the Magic Keyboard, because I kind of hate them together. Like when you close it, it's like you have your iPad and you have like two tubes down the side. One is the USB-C pass-through, and then you have the Apple Pencil on the other side, and like flops out, just you can lose it. Apparently you can lose it really easily. I really was hoping the Magic Keyboard would integrate some sort of Apple Pencil storage solution.
I saw a patent. Everyone loves patents, right? Patents. What is it? How do you call them? Patents?
Patents. I say it with a D because I'm...
Yeah, I saw a patent filing for the Magic Keyboard. I'll put it in the show notes. That shows a Apple Pencil storage solution in the little tube thing.
Yeah, it's just right there. Put them together.
My thinking on that is they went ahead and made the best storage solution for the Apple Pencil, which is just to attach it to the iPad itself. I feel like this feels like a regression to me to then store it inside of the Magic Keyboard thing.
It'd be nice to have the option. So like if it's in a bag, you don't knock it off and misplace it. Like, yeah, like, it's great on the top because you can take it on and off and it charges and everything, but it'd be nice if there was like a discrete way to have some sort of secondary place so it's like more tucked away more safely. That's all.
I feel like if it's in a bag, the place you've misplaced it is in the bag. It's just in the bag.
True. Maybe.
Right? It doesn't...
Beats me. I don't know what Apple Pencil is.
I definitely use my Apple Pencil less since the trackpad support.
Interesting. I was going to ask you.
Yeah, because, I always have my iPad pretty much always in the keyboard, right? So if I'm not using it with the external trackpad, like on my stand, if I'm using my iPad on the couch, I typically would have used an Apple Pencil to do some navigation stuff, but now I use the trackpad a lot. I still use the Apple Pencil for signing stuff and for some when I'm marking up documents, like the traditional uses of it. But I don't do any drawing of any kind, so I don't use it for that. So I still use the Apple Pencil, but it has been relegated from its role as a pointing device for my iPad.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think for a lot of people, the trackpad is way better for a lot of things.
Well, I wanted to follow up on the iPad mini with you.
Oh, yeah. Did you get one?
No. We spoke about it last time that Federico got one and everyone was super excited about it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned in iMessage a couple of days ago that you were loving your iPad mini more and more. And I was just wondering why. Like, what is it about this device that's making you so excited at the moment?
Yeah, I think what I said was, oh no, my 11-inch iPad Pro feels enormous.
Yeah, okay, that's probably, that is definitely a better way.
Because I was using my 11-inch out of the keyboard the other night, because I'm trying to buy a ceiling fan. Anyways, that's a whole complicated situation that I'm in.
Wait, I don't understand how those two things go together.
Because I was looking for I was doing ceiling fan research on my iPad.
You're just like, I was using my iPad outside of the keyboard case because I was looking for a ceiling fan.
How everybody does it, yeah.
everyone, hashtag relatable.
That's right. Well, I was laying on the couch with just the iPad because I need a ceiling fan, and it was too hot to get a laptop. So, I was draped across the couch looking for a ceiling fan on my 11-inch. I was like, oh, this iPad is enormous.
Right.
I was like, oh no, I have normalized the size of the iPad mini. I don't know. I'm enjoying it for reading, like Federico said. And I've got a Kindle, but I'm actually, I just started this new book and am reading it in the Kindle app on the iPad just to see if I like that experience. But for kind of like around the house stuff, it's better than my phone in a lot of ways. Because like if I'm just around the house, it doesn't have to fit in my pocket necessarily. And spoiler alert, I've just been around my house for a while now. I don't know. It's just something about the size is nice. If you want to read in bed or like catch up on Instapaper, it's a really nice size. And as someone who does not use their iPad for much work, it's kind of nice as like that, kind of social media web type thing. And I've been kind of smitten with it.
I've been thinking that I should probably break out my 11 and use that more at home. But it's kind of, for me at the moment, it's just that's just been sitting in my travel bag, womp womp, as it always usually does. And I've been either using my large iPad most of the time at my desk, and then just my iPhone when I'm not at my desk. But maybe I could use the smaller iPad around the house a little bit too.
Yeah, or you could get a mini.
It's just sitting there completely unused.
Get a mini.
However, I am considering maybe to not touch it because probably in like 2 weeks, it's going to become the sacrificial iPad.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be beta season, and yeah, I've been thinking about that with my MacBook Pro. What I'm going to do for a reason that is not important for now. There's going to be a time this fall where I'll be working on just my laptop for probably quite a while, and that precludes me from putting the beta on the laptop probably because I'm going to need to do like production work from somewhere else for a while. So anyways, I'm really questioning how I'm going to do my setup this year for macOS beta.
Wait, what are you going to need your laptop for?
Fine. So I am going to have foot surgery at some point in the fall.
Ah, yes.
I won't be able to come out to my office because I'm going to not be able to walk for a bit. So that'll be fun. So my plan is to set up a little desk somewhere inside the house where I could record and edit. Once I'm recovered enough to work, but not come out here. Yeah, because I'm not supposed to put any weight on it and stuff. So
those episodes are going to be fun because you're going to have big bed energy. it's just going to be super chill. Or we could do a return of you on pain medication. That's happened a few times in our recording career where you've been kind of like a little.
It has. It happened after I had elbow surgery, and I was super stoned.
Yeah, it was amazing. So I would like both of those things.
As long as you edit that episode.
I would totally. I'm very happy with it. That'd be great.
So anyway, my laptop will be my only Mac for a while, maybe like 6 weeks or something. So I won't be able to come out here, and that's gonna hamper how I deal with the macOS beta this year, I think. So
yeah, probably
we'll see. But that's not till the fall, so I got some time to worry about it, and I'll be fine. So, anyways, get an iPad Mini, become a 3 iPad guy.
No, I don't want one.
Tripad lifestyle, do it.
It's a very good name. I will grant you, it's almost worth it for that name. But I'm already only using one of my 2 iPads. I don't need a third one. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I think I'm probably good.
You want to take a break?
Yeah.
This episode of Connected is brought to you by Text Expander from our friends over at Smile. Text Expander lets you use abbreviations to expand simple things like your phone number or address. Really anything you type repeatedly, you should use Text Expander for. I first used it way back when I was a Mac Genius. We had it at the Genius Bar on those like floating laptops we used to have, so we can make all of our case notes kind of all conform to each other. I fell in love with it instantly, and I honestly can't use a Mac without it. This is one of those utilities I recommend basically to anyone using a computer. If you're using a Mac or iPhone or iPad, it's available everywhere. It saves me tons of time each month. It updates your snippets on all your devices. What's really cool is a bunch of iOS apps support it natively, so you can just sync your snippets to them. So you can use this at work, at home, anywhere in between. And you can make your snippets more powerful. You can do fill-in forms, pop-ups, and more. You can even fire AppleScript on the Mac with Text Expander, which I do pretty often. Really cool. And it's available for teams, so you can manage and share snippets across your organization. If you want to learn more about Text Expander, they do these really cool webinars every month. So you can sign up for the beginner, advanced, or team webinars to learn more about boosting your productivity at textexpander.com/webinar. Text Expander is available for macOS, Windows, Chrome, iPhone, and iPad, and Connected listeners will get 20% off their first year. Just go to textexpander.com/podcast to learn more. Check it out now and see your productivity improve at textexpander.com/podcast. Our thanks to Text Expander for the support of this show and Relay FM. All right, Myke, I saw a screenshot of something on your Mac, and I have questions.
All right.
So your username, or your short username, your home folder name on your iMac Pro is Relay FM.
Wait a second. Is it okay to tell people that? I feel like that's not okay.
Yeah. They don't know your password.
Well, I don't know. Like, I always see people, like, blocking out that kind of stuff.
No, it wasn't. It's just me and you today.
No. Seriously, like, I honestly don't know.
It's fine.
Am I going to get, like, hacked now or something?
No.
Okay.
My home folder's name is Steven with a capital S. I'm not worried about it.
Okay.
This started a conversation in my mind about why is that true?
Okay.
Why not just use your name?
Oh, I when you said a conversation in your mind, I thought you were about to give me like the actual conversation that unfolded in your brain.
Well, then you would
answer.
know how I think you sound in my head, and that's embarrassing. So,
okay,
you're very jolly in my mind, though. It's a lot of like sing-song talking.
My previous computer to this one was a Mac Pro that technically Relay FM bought for me.
Yes, we did.
And so I just named that account Relay FM because it was Relay FM's Mac, and I didn't really properly use it as my own Mac. And then eventually I sold it. We took care of that, but I bought
threw it in the
iMac
river.
Yeah. But I bought an iMac Pro instead and just did... Oh, no, I bought an iMac, I should say. I bought an iMac, right? The Retina iMac. And I just did Migration Assistant. So now that machine was called Relay FM. And then I did Migration Assistant again. So now this machine's called Relay FM. So they're all just called that.
So it is possible to change this. There's a support link in the show notes. And it is terrifying.
I mean, I never asked for this. Like, I didn't want to change. Oh, I've done this.
What?
I've done this. I did this when I did Migration Assistant. Do you remember this? migration assistant to my iMac Pro failed like 2 or 3 times.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that.
And I had to rename everything. And I followed a very specific set of instructions, and I think it was this that I followed, because it was, my account was called like Relay FM 2 or something, and that was just completely unacceptable. Because I remember I had like really bad issues with Migration Assistant, which is just like one of those things that should never go wrong.
It's true.
But it was going wrong for me quite badly. So yeah, I had to do this. It was horrifying.
It is horrifying. I once did this. I changed the user home folder short name, it's all kind of the same thing, on a laptop in like 2002, 2003, running macOS 10.2, which early versions of OS 10 really didn't let you do this. There were like some kind of, I mean, as hacky as it is now, some really hacky ways to do it in the past, but I didn't know any of those. And so I was like, oh, let me just change the name of this folder. And then I logged out and then didn't have a user folder anymore.
Wait, so you didn't bother to look at anything? You were just like, I'll change. I don't want the name. I don't want this folder to be called that anymore. I'll just change it.
Yeah, I didn't know very much.
Yeah,
I'd only been using the Mac for like a year, so I thought, hey, I'll just do this, and it was real bad. I lost some files. It was a work laptop. I was on a deadline for that job, of course.
Nice.
And lost some files that were not on an external drive. Remember, this is before Time Machine, right? Time Machine wasn't until 10.5. And so I always tell people now, if I get asked this, even though there's a way, I'm like, no, don't do it. Like, it's just, in my mind, it's such a stigma attached to it. It's like, it will destroy your life.
Sounds like fun.
You learn the hard way,
Yeah, I don't think I've ever done anything this catastrophic in my modern Mac life, but I had a Mac laptop of some description that was running a version of pre-OS 10 macOS. I don't know which one it was, right? This was when I was a kid. It was like my uncle's laptop. It was, one of the Mac laptops that had a trackball in it, right? Like, that's kind of what we're talking about. What could that have been, do you think, roughly? It's like a black one, had a trackball on it.
Yeah, some really ancient power book.
Yeah. So, and he gave me that to kind of just like tinker around with or whatever. And all I remember is I did something to it that made the like sad Mac face, and also the floppy disk with the question mark.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I could have done to it, but it wasn't good.
That's no good. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
We've all made mistakes, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Can't do it now on the iPad, really. It's all locked away. But the Mac still has its rough edges.
I saw there was a story a few weeks ago about Apple News Plus potentially getting audio versions of stories. Like, Apple was going to pay for the production of them, and publishers just had to opt in. And it could end up being good for publishers who opt in, because it means people will be more likely to spend more time with their content, right? Which is how Apple News Plus publishers are paid on that very generous 50-50 split that Apple make with them. And there was I saw a post on Mac Rumors where some iconography has been found that seems to suggest that this is in the 13.5 beta. So it's Apple News Plus audio, and then there's also a secondary icon with a headphone logo and audio, suggesting that they're doing something to get ready to introduce this initiative. I think this is funny in the sense of like it's in 13.5. Like, maybe that's going to happen sooner than expected. I wasn't expecting this to be a thing that occurred before iOS 14, but maybe this is a case of like, well, Apple News Plus really isn't doing what we want, so we're adding this feature.
Yeah.
Like, for me personally, I still don't imagine myself becoming a News Plus subscriber.
No.
But this is the type of feature where I would maybe give it a bit more consideration than I had previously. Like, if all of my favorite news companies were in this thing, I may be more inclined to pay for it if I could get audio versions of the articles that I want to read. Because, you know me, right? Like, I don't really enjoy reading. So there are times where like these really long articles that I would like to read, and I can only get like a quarter of the way through, and I just bail out. But if it was audio focused, then I could just listen to it, and I'd be happy. I'd be on my way. Especially because what I like about what it seems Apple is doing is that they are going to have human beings read the audio. There's schools of thought for either using virtual voices or humans for this stuff. I personally lean towards human.
Me too.
For obvious reasons. Like, I just prefer the sound. And so they're going to be doing that, and Apple, that's what they want to do, but it seems like it's going to be in 13.5 maybe. One, what do you think about this just as a overall initiative, and two, about it coming seemingly sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I think it's a good addition to News Plus. Clearly, it hasn't landed with a lot of people, and I think there are a lot of people like you, and also like me, who would prefer to listen to news. I mean, one of the things I do on the HomePod a lot is, hey, tell me the news, right? And I think a lot of people like that sort of way of consuming those things. And if they can do it in a way that is high quality and easy to use, like maybe you're on an article and the ones that have audio, there's just a button you can tap and it reads to you, I think that's fantastic. As far as the timing, I could see this being an iOS 14 thing, but at the same time, that's not till September or October. And my guess is that they want to try to move the needle on News Plus as much as they can. So whenever this is ready, I think they would do it.
And like, it doesn't need iOS 14 in theory. Like, you don't have to wait. It's not going to be like, oh, can't wait for iOS 14, right? Like, it's not going to be that kind of feature, I don't feel like.
I mean, these rumors say that it's just News Plus. I don't think this would be something that Apple News itself would get. Like, this is a premium feature, but
yeah,
maybe eventually it could end up as part of Apple News proper, at least for some stuff. I don't know.
There's a cost associated. Like, I can only imagine they would do that if they wanted to try and sell you on upgrading to News Plus. You're like, oh, you like this feature, huh? Maybe you want to give us some money and you get all your news this way.
Maybe you get like 3 audio stories a month or something, and after that, hey, you really ought to pay up.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I like it.
I would like more stuff like this. Like, I listen to Stratechery, the Stratechery Daily Update. I listen to it every single day and like that very much. Like, to the point where I wished more people that did email newsletters offered podcast options. Mm-hmm. Like, I've even thought about asking some people, but don't. But there are, and I don't mean like something like the Mac Stories newsletter, Club Mac Stories, doesn't make sense for me in that way, like, because it's more like chunked up. I'm talking like HotPod
could do it.
Yeah, HotPod could do it. I would like Casey Newton to do it. For, I think Casey's is called Interface, I think is the name of his email newsletter. Like, more, I would like stuff like that where it's frequent, almost daily, and they are long articles. Like, it's just one article basically. I would like that a lot, but it's a lot of work, and especially in Casey Newton's thing, it's not a pay-for newsletter, although I would personally pay to get that feature. But I would like it because these types of podcasts are so good, like, that it's just a 10-minute thing. Like, you can just fit that in anywhere, right? Like, washing the dishes, listen to an episode of Stratechery, like, great. And I listen every day, and I feel like I am more informed because of it. So I like being informed. Like, I like to have been informed, but I just don't have I don't even know what the right word would be to actually read these things. I especially don't like it's email, right? Like, I don't like extra email because I get lots of email. So I have to like move all these things around to different folders or whatever, and then I never read them. So I would like this stuff to be popping up more in my podcast app of choice. Maybe
you could print your email newsletters and then read them out loud to yourself. Think about that.
I mean, it's not helpful.
Well,
really.
Please consider the environment before reading this newsletter. That's what they all say at the bottom. You have another story in here about Apple Music and podcast and Zane Lowe. What's going on here?
I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that I think your pick about original podcasts has come to fruition. I don't want to call it done yet from this one, but I think we can put this in for consideration of argument later on in the year. So the Beats One show that Zane Lowe does, which is interviews with musicians, has been put in to Apple Podcasts now. So the interviews also exist as a podcast. I believe they are also still existing on Apple News on Beats One, Apple Music Beats One. So the pick being that you suggested, I think, was original content.
So the pick, as written, says Apple launches its own podcast content beyond Oprah.
Then, yeah, I mean, this would probably be it, right? I feel like this will probably get you what you were looking for for a point. So you finally got on a scoreboard. Congratulations.
That's not my Ricky pick.
Yeah,
because I'm in trouble.
Your Ricky pick's not happening. It's definitely the Ricky. By the way, is that Apple will launch a podcast app on Android. It's just not happening, in my opinion. But good luck to you, my friend. I'm gonna clean up.
This is your year to lose.
Yeah, it really is at this point.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool. I think having content that is behind the Apple Music paywall, having that come out a little bit is neat. And content like this is the perfect thing to do, right? Like these interviews, standalone as podcast episodes, I think it makes a ton of sense to move that content to that format. Yeah.
I mean, in other Beats One shows probably wouldn't move as easily because they feature a lot of music, and that's not going to work. We can't really put that in a podcast because it's music. There's a bunch of rights around that. But the interview stuff makes a lot of sense to do it. I think it's clever.
All right. Ready for our second break?
Yeah.
All right. This episode is also brought to you by Hello, the folks that make insanely comfortable buckwheat pillows. If you haven't tried one of these, it's pretty different from your regular fluffy pillows. Honestly, way better because your head and neck is supported all night. This doesn't collapse under the weight of your head like traditional pillows. It stays cool and dry, unlike those other pillows, so you don't have to like turn it over in the middle of the night to the cool side. It's always cool. You can add or remove filling to suit your needs, so your pillow can be just the way you like it. And buckwheat pillows have been around for a long time. They're very popular in countries like Japan, and they're on fancy pillow menus at fancy hotels. Hello sent me one, and I got to say, my daughter stole it from me. She tried it out, and she just took it. So she really likes it, and she finds it very comfortable, and we were able to adjust it. It's really easy to adjust the size of it. You basically unzip it, and then we put some extra buckwheat in a gallon-sized Ziploc bag, put it on the shelf, so if we ever want to add back to it, we can do that. It's something you just can't do with traditional pillows. Hello is made in the US of A with quality construction and materials. The certified organic cotton case is cut and sewn for durability, and the buckwheat is grown and milled in the U.S. So if you're curious to try one of these, you can. You can sleep on it for 60 nights, and then if Hello isn't for you, you can send it back for a refund. Head on over to hellopillow.com/connected right now to get your own buckwheat pillow. That's Hello Pillow, HULLO, pillow.com/connected. And if you buy more than one, they have a special discount of $20 off depending on the sizes you opt for. They have fast, free shipping with every order, and 1% of profits are donated to the Nature Conservancy. Give it a try. If you love it, you keep it. If you don't, send it back. That's hellopillow.com/connected. Our thanks to Hello for their support of the show and of Relay FM.
I saw an article a week or two ago on Mac Rumors suggesting a rumor, as you would assume from Mac Rumors, but not about the Mac, about the iPhone, about a portless iPhone. So the way it goes is this, that the iPhone 12 will have a Lightning port as we would expect, but maybe not one. I would prefer USB-C. But that the iPhone 13 will have no port. It will have no Lightning port on the iPhone, no USB-C port on the iPhone. It will feature Qi for charging and a smart connector for data, so if you needed to plug it into your computer or whatever. I have a lot of questions about this. I think my first one is kind of like, why? Like, why would you want a portless iPhone? I can't really work it out. Like, feels I guess like a design thing, like you would do it for design reasons, like, oh, look how beautiful this design is. But that feels honestly kind of stupid to me. Like that feels like honestly the worst of Apple design. So again, this is presuming this is true, right? So just for the sake of this conversation, let's presume this is true, right?
Okay.
And that this will happen. It's just easier that way. Like, it feels like if they were to do this, that it's everything that people hate about Apple design.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, because, again, I will still state this, as I have for many years, the removal of the headphone jack, there was never any good reason for it, right? They removed it from the iPhone 7.
Yes.
Because they needed to get rid of it the year before the iPhone 10 came out. Because they didn't want the iPhone 10 to have it, or the iPhone 10 couldn't have it because of what they were building, right, with their curved screen. So they removed it from the 7 so that wouldn't be the story of the iPhone 10. No one will ever convince me otherwise. Like that, I 100% believe that is the case, and I've never seen an argument that was convincing to me. Like, because people were like, oh, they put this chamber in it, but like the chamber was empty, like, or there's nothing behind it. It wasn't actually connected to anything, like speaker wise. It isn't a waterproofing thing, because waterproofing exists on phones today that are like the IP68 rating exists on phones today that have a headphone jack. So I believe that they either wanted to or needed to do it for the 10, so they did it from the 7, so they sacrificed the bad press, because you don't want the bad press on the iPhone 10. So removing a charging port, I just can't, like, it feels even worse to me, because like Bluetooth is better. I don't think Qi is better. I just don't see. I know people prefer it. I mean, and we'll get to some of the problems that you can have, like when you start extrapolating this out to your life, right? But I just don't think that an overall experience of Qi charging is better. I really cannot. And I've been thinking about this for like 2 weeks. I've wanted to talk about this story. I can't find a positive reason that you would do this, logically.
Well, I agree with you. I think you're totally right about the iPhone 7, but I think you're right about this too. And it is just one of those things that you're right. It is everything that people like to beat up on Apple for, right? This would be the epitome of that. And on their most popular product, right? When it's on something other than the iPhone, people may be a little more forgiving, but the iPhone's the most important thing that the company makes. And to change it in any dramatic way is always a gamble. Think about when they went from 30-pin to Lightning, people were furious for years. And I think that's why we haven't seen USB-C yet, because they don't want to go through a port transition again. But this seems like going well beyond a port transition, taking it off completely. I don't see it being a good idea.
The Lightning transition, right, whilst frustrating, you could see logic to it. The Lightning port had more functionality, it was way smaller, it was bidirectional or omnidirectional, however you say it. You didn't have to do the pin thing. Remember, like, we had to, like, I think they ended up changing that, but initially, like, the 30-pin connector had those little attached
release tabs.
The release things on the side. I think they ended up getting rid of that for the iPhone, right?
I think so,
eventually,
yeah.
I think you could just pop it in and out of there, but it wasn't omnidirectional, right? The 30-pin, it only went in one way.
It was not reversible, so it had it up and a down, just like USB-A did.
The Lightning is better in every way for that, right? It's smaller, so you can do more things from a design perspective. If they even had a smart connector on this device, that's still arguing the fact that you can't go completely like connectorless, right? But that smart connector would be not for charging, it would seem. Or maybe it would charge slowly, I don't know. But the rumor suggests that it will only be for data. So if you had diagnostic issues or if you wanted to sync over a cable or whatever, you could use a smart connector for that. So, like, yeah, it just doesn't feel like that there is a benefit that I can see. Like, it's, you know, if this was the introduction of wireless charging, maybe you could sell people on it. But it's not even that, right? Like, Qi charging has existed and it continues to exist.
I think this being the beginning of wireless charging would actually be harder, because at least now people
Good
have
point.
these things.
Good point. You have to give
And
it
they're
some
in a lot
time
of
for it
cars too. A lot of new cars have wireless charging pads.
I see it in some restaurants and stuff too. Like I had seen it in like coffee shops, stuff like that, or airports, like places where you would want to charge. I was starting to see more Qi charging because like Qi is good as a universal standard because all phones of all manufacturers have it, right? Now, arguably USB-C is going this way too, though, which is, you know, basically really it's the iPhone is the holdout of new devices. But at least, you know, we can all agree on Qi. That's quite fun. I'm pretty proud of that. But like everyone is like, you know, both iPhone and Android, like amongst all manufacturers, like everyone's using Qi charging. So it's like universal standard. So it can be used and it can be available in places. But I always think about, because it will happen again one day, traveling, right? Like I remember this when the headphone jack was taken away, it became more frustrating if you used wired headphones because you couldn't charge and listen to music at the same time, right? How would you charge your phone on a bus or on a plane? How would you do that?
Yeah, or in a backpack in between, right? Like running through the airport, you can plug your phone into your battery bank in your pocket.
Yep. How would any of that work in a Qi charging world?
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't. Like, are they going to sell something that has a battery and has a internal wireless coil, and then you can like, I don't know. It is way less flexible than plugging in with a cable.
Like as Justin is saying in the Real FM Discord, like you could have a battery case with an internal Qi charger, and that's fine. But then I also have to buy an external battery case. Like many planes, many coaches, many trains have USB ports on them or power ports, and all I need is a cable, and I can plug my phone in, right? And that means I don't have to spend an extra $100 on a battery case if I don't want to. Right, so like, it really it limits things a lot, right? Or like even if it was fine when I was traveling somewhere, I would then be taking a Qi charger in my backpack for when I got to a hotel. Like I assume not many people do that. Like people, you know, they may Qi charge at home, but they travel when they're on the road. They will use a cable because Qi chargers are big, right? When you traveled as a Qi charging person, you wouldn't take a Qi charger, would you?
No, for a bunch of reasons. One, it's way bulkier than a cable, and two, it doesn't fast charge. And on trips, especially trips like rest in peace WWDC, where like, you're out until the middle of the night or something. Like you may be home, or like in your hotel or Airbnb or whatever, for like an hour. I want to fast charge during that hour to get as much power back into my phone as possible, and Qi charging just isn't very fast.
And so, like, I just can't work out where, like, I can't, again, it's like more for me in the cons column. Like, and look, I am sure there are people who do take Qi chargers with them on trips and find some way to charge on a plane by, like, having a little disc and putting their phone on it. But that just seems kind of ridiculous to me. I'm sorry. Like, more power to you if that is your way of doing things. But, like, that just... That doesn't work for me. That seems wild. The only thing that could, like, I don't know. You know what? Also, I feel like a flight attendant would be like, "What are you doing?" Right? Like, I feel like that people wouldn't like that to see you do that. But unless I guess there is some kind of like massive battery breakthrough in which your phone could operate for 2 to 3 days without a charge, right? Like, if they were to somehow couple those things together, I could maybe get this a bit more, right? That, like, the idea of charging changes, that, like, Qi, they've worked out a fast charging spec, which other companies are doing, right? Like, OnePlus have one that they've expanded the Qi spec to also allow them to do fast charging with a compatible charger. So maybe that's one part. And, like, two, your battery lasts for 3 days or whatever, then I could see it, right? But that doesn't seem, that kind of technology doesn't seem like it's in the near future. Like, we've all heard about this new battery tech forever, right? What is they call it? It's like carbon or something? You know what I'm talking about? Like, there's this whole new battery technology that's going to change everything, but I feel like I've been hearing about it for 10 years. Graphene? Is that it? Graphene batteries? Like, I think this thing I've been hearing about forever that, like, if it actually works, it's going to be wild and it's going to change everything. But I feel like I've been hearing about it for probably like 10 years. But if that kind of thing comes to pass, then great. But like, it doesn't seem like that there's anything to suggest that that's happening in the near future.
The future is always just a couple years away, though. So, it'll be here soon.
That's true, I guess. Let's throw out this whole argument. Steven's torpedoed it.
It's always right around the corner. The thing about the smart connector, too, it makes me think about the Surface connector on Microsoft Surface products that charges and you can hook up to a dock, right? And they took grief from users for a really long time not having USB-C on their devices. Like, well, why can't I just charge over USB-C or do this? Why do I have to have this weird proprietary thing, right? And they've relented on some of that. They've got USB-C on some of their stuff now. But people complained that it was like a thing that only worked for this one device. And if you think about Lightning, that's kind of true now, but Lightning is, like, iPhones are so ubiquitous, Lightning is basically everywhere. And Apple uses Lightning for AirPods and almost all the iPads and a bunch of other stuff too. And so in a way, even though Lightning is proprietary to Apple, it doesn't feel as proprietary as something like the Surface connector, which is like a thing that Surface people have to deal with and other people don't. Right,
but Surface users have options now because you can also charge by USB-C now if you use a Surface.
Yeah.
For a lot of them.
Yeah, but that's a very recent change.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that way, Lightning feels like a standard that it's really not. But moving to something that is even more proprietary, that if they use the smart connector, like, they've got to move over a bunch of other stuff too. And you already have like the Apple Watch doing its own thing, and you already have the iPad line split. Like, it could be where you're an Apple user and you got to have 4 different cables to charge your devices that are in your pocket or on your body. And that is something that's frustrating, but Lightning kind of puts it all underneath one umbrella for most of those things. And so I just don't know if they do this. Like, they've really got to sell the benefits of a smart connector for charging and or data. And I just don't know if anyone would be convinced that it's better than Lightning, let alone better than USB-C, which is what a lot of people want to see.
Yeah, like, as you're right, like, even if they do say that, oh, you can also charge via a smart connector, but, primarily you should be using Qi, it's still like, no, I would just prefer USB-C, thank you, right? Because that would be really great, because then my iPad, my MacBook, my Nintendo Switch, and my iPhone can all be charged by the same cable. Because that's actually what I want, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I saw a rumor from our friends at Mac Rumors, but this time about the iPad, that the next iPad Air is reportedly going to get a USB-C port, which I think that makes sense, that the iPad line could all move to USB-C, right? Because, again, USB-C is a better connector for charging stuff because more and more products are being charged by the same thing.
But it makes the iPhone even stand out more.
Exactly. Because then it's like, well, now I really want my iPhone to be USB-C because I've just now removed, like, now it's in a smaller camp because maybe my iPad and my iPhone were charging via Lightning. Well, now my iPad is by USB-C, and my now, like, the iPhone is the odd one out that I'm bringing a cable for, right? And, like, that would just be, I would really not like that. It would be really frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And also, again, so Justin in the chat is like that the currently the phone is too thin for Type-C. Like, that's not. Again, I will bring up my favorite fact, right? That the iPad Pro is the thinnest iOS device ever made. Not just the thinnest iPad, thinnest iOS device ever made. So they fit it on that, right? Like, they could fit it on an iPhone. They definitely could do it. Like, maybe they would need to flatten the sides, but that seems like going to be the fun, cool thing anyway to do. And again, it would be super disappointing to me if they took the design cues from the iPad Pro but kept the Lightning port on it.
And it'd be really even more confusing than the connector situation is now on the iPads.
Yeah, I really hope that we are surprised and the next iPhone has USB-C on it.
Me too.
But I can live with it. I will not be happy at all if they take away all the ports in the future. Like I just can't see that as like a thing that I can reconcile in my brain.
It'd be a real bummer. Real bummer, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so who knows? I think, like you said, the second you start talking about what this means in real life, like as you travel or as you do whatever, it falls apart really quickly. So, All right, this episode is also brought to you by Zojo. Zojo is a cross-platform development tool for creating native apps for the desktop, mobile web, and Raspberry Pi, with Android support coming soon. Zojo uses native controls so your app looks and acts like it's shown on every platform, and you can build your UI with drag and drop using one straightforward programming language to implement the functionality. With Zojo, you can build apps 10 times faster than with other tools because you can share code between the platforms you want to support. And you can cross-compile so you can build a native macOS app right from your PC. Zojo has been around for 20 years and is great for everyone, from new to professional developers alike. And with 400,000 users worldwide, apps built with this can be found in basically any conceivable category. So go to zojo.com/connected, that's xojo.com/connected, and just see how many companies that you know are already using it. It's free to use for learning and development, but you'll need a license to build standalone applications, and Connected listeners can get 20% off with the code CONNECTED. That's zojo.com/connected to get 20% off with the code CONNECTED. Thanks to Zojo for their support of the show and Relay FM.
So I think this is probably going to be the penultimate anticipating WWDC segment that we do on the show, because next week is a regular episode. The week after that, I assume we'll be doing our Ricky picks for WWDC. So we'll see. So we're going to do, I think we promised this last week, macOS. This is probably why Federico took a vacation, because we're going to talk about macOS now. And I figure we should just turn this over to you, because I think of the two of us, or the three of us, you're definitely the person most in tune with the Mac. So why don't you take it away for what you would both think and like to see? Okay.
I'm going to rope you into this because I think that you also are a Mac power user. You do a lot of work on your Mac, so I want to hear what you have to say too. So I kind of just want to tell a couple of stories about some things that I've had happen in just the last few weeks. So I have a MacBook Pro and I have a Mac Pro. And these are some things that have happened to me in macOS. My MacBook Pro has woken up and complained that it needed a Bluetooth keyboard attached. It was not aware that it had an internal keyboard. I ended up putting it back to sleep and waking it up again. And it's like, oh, I have a keyboard. So not super confidence instilling.
I cannot fathom how that occurred, but that's fun, I guess.
Yeah. And some people on Twitter were like, oh yeah, I've seen that too. So,
oh boy.
The Mac Pro continues to struggle sleeping and waking from sleep. This was better, and now it's worse again in 10.15.5, the current version of Catalina. I've talked to a couple other Mac Pro users, and this seems to be pretty universal across the different setups. Like I use the LG 5K, other people use the Pro Display. Sometimes USB can cause weird sleep-wake issues. There doesn't seem to be a big consensus on it's this one thing. Sometimes, including this morning, I came to my office, I hit the spacebar to wake the Mac up, it logged me in with my Apple Watch, and I had no visible cursor. So I could move the mouse, and if I moved it to the right edge, the dock would move a little bit, and I could take it to the top left, and it's like the Apple menu, but no visible cursor. So I took my invisible mouse, went down to where I thought the restart menu was, and hit restart. And my cursor came back. Cursor support's only been part of macOS since, 1984. Like
it's the beginning of macOS.
Yeah, the very beginning.
Right? Yeah.
I shared this last week, but I've had to delete Finder preferences to end Finder crashes. And I had to replace a Time Machine drive recently, and I had to reboot a machine to get Time Machine running again. You're supposed to be able to just remove the old drive, point it at the new drive and start, and system preferences would just spin until I rebooted. That's actually not on either one of my machines. It's someone else's computer. I bring these up not to just hit macOS over the head with a frying pan, even though I want to sometimes, But it's that there's a lot of things, a lot of little things that people deal with every day, like keyboards and cursors, that just seem a little bit broken at times. None of these issues are ongoing for me, except for the Mac Pro Sleeping and Waking, which sort of comes and goes. But it's these little edges, like, why is this a thing that I have to worry about? Why do I have to worry about my cursor disappearing? I was thinking through this list and I said, oh, well, it's just time to ask for a Snow Leopard release. And then I thought that it is really sad that every few years we have to ask for one of those. Right. So if people aren't familiar, Snow Leopard was, oh gosh, I don't know, like 11 or 12 years ago or something, 2009. And it was touted as 0 new features. That's not really true. It has some new stuff, but the big push was on stability. And
Didn't that feature Grand Central Dispatch?
Yeah. There's a lot of under the hood stuff.
Massive thing, right?
Yeah. 64-bit support, head to toe. It was like a lot of stuff. Dropped Power PC support.
I love that feature name, by the way, Grand Central Dispatch.
So
it's so beautiful as a name. Like it just sounds so good. Yeah, very nice.
Do you know what it does?
Moves trains around? I don't know.
Yeah.
I know it's some underpinning thing. If I was going to say, I guess it's something about like using the multiple processor cores that are now in every Macintosh for more efficient performance due to the technical difficulties traditionally involved in making applications optimized for multi-core CPUs.
That sounds like a Wikipedia article.
Nah. I would assume it shifts thread handling to focus to itself rather than leaving it to specific applications to distribute jobs evenly across cores and clears up unused memory created by inactive or old threads to achieve maximum performance, I guess.
If you just had to, off the top of your head.
If I had to just assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that has become sort of a rallying cry for Mac users. And in High Sierra, Apple's like, hey, it's like Sierra, but it's better. Also, there's a new file system. But, it was sort of a year off for Mac features, even though it really wasn't, and trying to make it, more stable and calm things down a little bit. And I'm tired of every 3 or 4 years asking for this. I mean, I've said it on this show probably more than 1 year that it's time for a sort of a Snow Leopard release. We talked about that in terms of iOS 12, right? iOS 11 was kind of a hot mess, and 12 was, after its launch, pretty good. And then 13 was a disaster, right? And now it's like, oh, maybe they'll do like a Snow Leopard year for the iPad. This is something that Apple users who pay attention just keep coming back to. And I blame it on one thing. I blame it on the annual release cycle. The Mac didn't have that in the beginning. It was every 2 to 3 years or so. And then starting with Lion or so, it became annual. And the reason they did that is there were a lot of features that came out on the Mac and iOS at the same time or very close to each other. So like iOS 8 and Yosemite, you had handoff, right? You want that across your platforms. But while the iPhone, and particularly the iPad, still need annual releases, the Mac doesn't. I think that there could be a world where we stay on Catalina or whatever for a couple of years, and you know what? Take a look at what Microsoft's doing, right? It's Windows 10. They have a big update every 8 months or so that adds new features, but the core OS is the same. Why is it that when you updated to High Sierra or Mojave or something, that all of your USB audio broke? Like, why is that being messed with? Well, if you say we're not going to go into the core, we're going to add features so it works with iCloud or whatever, the Mac would benefit from that slower pace. And, you asked me to come up with like a feature list for 1016. I don't know. Like, maybe I'm not like smart enough or have a good enough imagination, but the Mac feels pretty dang feature complete to me. But the features that are there, a lot of them are breaking down. And I really would implore Apple to slow down on the macOS release cycle. And it's one thing for me to complain about it as an end user. And like, yes, like I'm a power user. I run like, my half of our production company on it. But in the enterprise and education, the annual cycle doesn't exist, right? A lot of education customers, and especially a lot of enterprise customers, stay on, the N-1 release. So they're all running Mojave right now, or maybe even before that. Maybe they're still in High Sierra. and they will upgrade when they have to. Maybe their security updates stop, or they have a security application that requires the new thing, or they get a bunch of 16-inch MacBook Pros that can only run Catalina, so they have to support it. For a lot of people, the annual cycle is a major headache. A lot of important Mac customers, it's a major headache. And so I think, in talking with my friends and people I know on the internet who are in that world of supporting Macs at scale, none of them are a fan of this annual release cycle. And I think it'd be really nice if Apple would break from it.
Well, what if it was like still came out every year, but it was really TikTok in nature?
It would really be up to Apple to make it really clear that's what they're doing, right? Like, it would be easy to assume that, okay, there was Sierra and High Sierra. We had Mojave. Maybe Catalina will be sort of a quieter year. And Catalina, in a lot of ways, was the biggest change to macOS there's been in 7 or 8 years. And it's like, well, Apple, if they're going to do that, they need to like lay it out in advance and say, hey, so just hypothetically, hey, Catalina was a big change. 1016, we're calling it, I don't know, something related to Catalina. I don't know. I'm not very familiar with California.
Hi, Catalina. Snow, Catalina.
No, it's an island, right? So like soggy Catalina.
Okay.
It is Catalina that you know, but we've changed these 5 or 6 things. We didn't touch anything else. If they were really clear about that and they stuck with it long enough that people would trust it, I think that would be fine. But I feel like they're running a race that doesn't need to be run, and they are only hurting the product in the meantime.
Like, I am on Mojave, and I have like no complaints like you do. Like, I feel like maybe, there are always bugs.
Of course.
But it feels like Catalyst has been, for whatever reason, a little trickier for some users, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe like another version could still have new features in it, but would be more stable after the typical first or second point release. Because like, I'm sure there were complaints about Mojave, but whatever those complaints were, like, they're not affecting me anymore, or they're not a problem for me. So, like, I think maybe people have a bad opinion of Catalyst because it does include a bunch of stuff which does degrade the experience, kind of like by design.
Catalina, you said Catalyst, but it's a confusion.
Yeah. But that too, I guess. But like that actually leads me on to a point of like when you're saying about like what features could be added, like stuff like that, like making Mac Catalyst better could be something, right? Which people would want.
Oh yeah, and I've got a handful of them. As far as like big features, it's pretty good. But yeah, I don't know. It just feels like the Mac's on a treadmill working way harder than it has to. That's my analogy for the day.
Well, what would you want to see then? What kind of features would be realistic for you?
So there are a couple. One is this is going to be nerdy for a second, but Apple with Catalina rolled out this thing called System Extensions and Driver Kit. So like right now, if you install VMware Fusion, right, you want to virtualize Windows, that application will install a kernel extension, so it has like deep roots in the OS, and it's how it allocates its memory and does all this stuff. And those are sort of inherently insecure. Apple's done a lot to harden the kernel against kernel extension intrusion, but kernel extensions by their nature have access to a lot of things. And Apple has said, hey, we're going to transition away from these. In fact, they are deprecated at this point in Catalina in favor of System Extensions and Driver Kit, which are two tools that sort of take on what kernel extensions used to do, but they elevate them into the user space, so it's more secure. So I think that could be going away either this year or next year. I don't think it's any longer than 2021. That means that if you have apps that run kernel extensions, like I've got a couple, those applications will need to be updated or they will break. And it's, virtualization software. It's some enterprise security software like McAfee and some others may use kernel extensions. And so that's going to be, at least for probably enterprise or power users, that could be a pain in the butt. Not as big as a deal as the 32-bit app, death curtain that Catalina draped over the landscape, but could be a rough thing for some types of users.
Well, let me ask you a question on that, right? Because the 32 to 64 thing,
Yeah.
my expectation was the apps that died were just the apps that weren't updated. Like, I can't imagine there were that many applications that couldn't be updated for 64-bit.
Yeah, I think
Right?
it was mostly like, oh, I've used this app for 15 years and it quit getting support
Yeah.
5 years ago.
But are there applications that couldn't run because of this new kernel extension thing? Like, I'm asking you, like, is that a thing? Like, are there applications that, because of this, would not be able to work?
No, but again, it's up to those developers to...
Right, so it's a similar thing that, like, this replicates but changes the functionality. If someone puts in the work, they can create a driver kit kernel extension rather than the typical kernel extension. Okay, that's fine then. I was just wondering if, like... Because, yeah, I don't know, I hear something like that without knowing too much about it, and it kind of reminds me of, like, locking the system down.
Yeah.
So I wondered if they'd removed any functionality.
It should be relatively okay once people get on board with it. So, and again, they've had warning. They announced it last year, so.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but that's, still a lot of apps died in the 32 to 64.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's a similar thing. There will just be applications that are using kernel extensions which just won't be updated. And look, I can kind of get, like, personally, it's like, okay, right? Like, it would be a shame if there was an app that I lost that I couldn't replace, but things have to move on eventually.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really personally have a lot of problem with the 32 to 64 thing. I didn't like the way that the upgrade path was for Catalyst, because I don't think it was made clear enough to users early enough.
Agreed.
But from the sense of, like, the developer, right? Like, from the development angle, like, or just like in the abstract, it's like I do agree that things have to move forward, but I don't feel like users were told early enough in the upgrade process that there are applications that were just not going to work anymore for them.
There are rumors that Messages will become a Catalyst app. It seems like a lot of the Messages stuff is actually already there, but not sort of put into an application. I think Steve Trounsmith and others found some of that.
Yeah, and Shortcuts as well, Steve found. Like,
yeah, Shortcuts is basically just all there with no UI. Yeah. So I think some of those things will continue to take shape. Catalyst was new, and I wrote at the time that it really felt like Catalyst was done in secret, and most of Apple didn't know about it. And there was also Swift UI at the same time, and most of Apple didn't know about it. And their Swift UI and Catalyst are sort of on a collision course in a way. I think Catalyst is the short-term bridge, and Swift UI is the long-term future. But we haven't really seen much of either on macOS, right? There are a handful of apps, some from the year before that are terrible, like Home and what was it, Stocks, and those original ones. Home, I think, being the worst by far. And then there's the newer ones, right? So, like, the podcast app on the macOS, it's actually pretty good. Like, it feels like a Mac app for the most part. It works like a Mac app for the most part. And it's running on Catalyst, unlike TV and music, which are still basically the old iTunes guts, but just sort of refreshed. So I think we will see more Catalyst apps over time from Apple. I think Messages is ripe for it. It's living in, like, the cave where it found the bones of iChat. So,
and I would like to see, personally, just from a statement perspective, a core to the system application like Messages become Catalyst. Like, podcasts is nice, but, like, it was new. And also, like, look, obviously I love podcasts, but not I can imagine not a lot of use on the Mac, nor is it, like, fundamental to the platform.
No.
Right. But Messages, like,
is
all
huge.
right, like, here we go. Now, I have a question for you, though, right? This is all fine to say, like, oh, I don't want to see too much happen to the Mac, or, like, oh, Apple probably won't do that much. What about an ARM transition, though? Like, if this is the year, isn't that going to be, like, a massive undertaking for macOS?
Absolutely. I was thinking about the Intel switch, and how, in one way, to the user, it was basically invisible. Like, you lost classic mode, but if you were still running classic mode in Tiger, you had it coming anyways, probably. But for most people, you just bought a MacBook Pro, or, like, your, white Intel iMac that you had, and it was just really fast. And it was a pretty good, smooth transition. Now, that was only possible because Apple did a ton of work behind the scenes. So they had Intel versions of the OS running on a, sort of secret lab bench somewhere. They had it all ready to go. They had Rosetta, which allowed PowerPC apps to run on Intel Macs under emulation. Most of them. There were a couple of apps that couldn't do it, but for the most part they could. But so Apple can go to those resources again, right? They can have emulation. They can keep the interface the same. It's just that your MacBook Air now, instead of 10 hours of battery life, it gets 20. And that's the only change. Like, that's the ideal solution, I think, for an end user, right? Your next laptop gets twice the battery life of your old one. That's what people want out of an ARM transition, right? That's what people want, not knowing there's an ARM transition coming, but it's like, that's just what consumers want when they buy a MacBook Air. So in terms of developers, though, it's a huge deal because they've got to have their apps up and running on ARM. But in talking with a bunch of developer friends, that's going to be way easier than it was PowerPC to Intel, because there's so much ARM stuff going on already. And if you have code base shared between your Mac app and your iOS app, it's already written in a way that is going to be really easy just to flip that switch or check that box in Xcode. Not that it's going to be one click and you're done. There's going to be some fine tuning, but it seems like it may be less work for developers making apps in modern ways than the Intel switch was all those years ago. So it is a big upheaval, but I think it could be less of an upheaval than it was when we went to Intel. That makes sense?
Yeah, but what about like the platform itself though? Like, would it be... My assumption would be that there's a lot of stuff currently in macOS which has been kicking around for a long time. Mm-hmm. Right, like not as a developer, like who's taken advantage of the APIs, but like just the stuff that's been in the Mac been dragging along for years and years since the Intel transition. And my assumption would just be that it would be a lot of work from Apple internally to get it to a point where it would function.
Yeah,
and
maybe
they would have to have the entire thing functioning, right?
Yeah,
like you can't stage the release of the operating system.
Sure. Right. And so what I've heard from people that in the years before the Intel transition, Steve Jobs was like, we've had it running for 5 years. All of our projects are cross-compiled. Like, that was true, but it wasn't super true. Like, yes, maybe Mail ran on the Intel version of Jaguar, but it was kind of busted and they had a lot of work to do. If the ARM transition is coming, if the ARM transition is coming in 3 weeks, that work's all done by this point. And if you remember, at a previous WWDC, Apple took the time to say, even though iPhone OS was born of macOS, all these years ago, over time, the subsystems have wandered apart from each other. And we have been working over the last several years to reunify them. So now, let's just say Core Audio is, I don't know if Core Audio specifically, but as an example, Core Audio now is way closer on macOS and iOS, or whatever subsystem you pick. And so it may be that Apple's been doing this for years, moving macOS and iOS closer together, so when they do make this transition, all their ducks are already in a row. And no doubt the first developer version of ARM macOS is probably going to be buggy. I mean, that was true of the developer preview of Tiger for Intel. But by the time Tiger for Intel shipped, if you set a PowerBook down next to a MacBook Pro, the only difference was the MacBook Pro was way faster. And that's what the end goal should be.
Let's hope so.
Oh, yeah. And there's always the question of, well, what does the developer transition look like? I wrote about this a couple years ago on Federico's site about the Intel development kit. And go read that article if you haven't seen it. It's in the show notes, where they had like a Power Mac G5 case, but with like a Pentium 4 in it. It was very strange. I'd love to get my hands on one. If someone's got one floating around, get in touch. But it is this like standalone product. And now, Jason says like, oh, maybe the current iPad Pro could be the transition kit. They got the trackpad and the keyboard. I don't know what they're going to do. They'll do something, probably. But they may also not actually have to do anything because of where the development tools are now compared to they were then. Maybe they can just ship an ARM MacBook Air in the fall, tell everybody now, and it basically be okay at launch. I don't know. It's going to be exciting, and maybe this is the year. It feels like it's getting closer and closer. So,
yeah,
I hope it's true. I think ARM Macs would be really exciting.
Can you imagine any kind of situation where it would happen this year but not be shown at WWDC?
No, this
it
is
feels
the
like
time.
It would have to be that, right? Like
This
you
is
either
the
do
time.
it now, like you do it with WWDC, or you wait another year, right? Like this isn't immediately a customer story.
Right.
And making it a customer story before a developer story would make the customer story worse.
Agreed.
So,
and
yeah.
if you look at what they did with Intel, it's obviously they're a different company now, but they said, hey, developers, we're telling you today, you can get a copy of this. You can order one of these bananas Pentium Power Macs, and we're going to start shipping them soon. And that did, probably have a little Osborne effect on those PowerPC Macs, but Apple had to tell developers so they were ready. Because to your point, you don't want to buy a computer you can't run any software on. And then they shipped the first Intel Macs that January, so 5-6 months later, and then they were done by the next WWDC. They did it all in a year, which was faster than they said it would be. Now, we're sidestepping for today. What do they do with the iMac Pro and my beloved Mac Pro? Those Intel machines that maybe they can't meet the specs of yet. I don't know. But I do think they've got to tell developers ahead of time and just understand that, yeah, it may hurt our sales in the meantime, but honestly, I don't even know if it will, because the MacBook Air is really good, and people who are just going to go out and buy a MacBook Air, they pay attention to this stuff. Like, I don't think they do. And even if they do, they may not understand it. And so,
well, they were still selling them when the keyboard was bad.
Yeah, a bunch of them, right?
So,
and honestly, like, it would keep me from buying a new laptop. I mean, I just bought one, so I bought one not that long ago, so I don't need one. But it would hold me off. But there's not many people in the world that buy Apple products that are as tuned in as us and our audience are.
And also, I could imagine a lot of people wouldn't want the new one, right? As well, like I can imagine people saying, like, no, I would prefer to stick to what I know.
Give it
not a lot,
yeah.
but I can imagine there also being people in that camp.
Or give it a little while. Let's give it 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's possible, too, that depending on the emulation story, there may be people who prefer an Intel Mac for a while. I think I've told this story before, but I had a customer at the Apple Store who had a Power Mac G5 into the Mac Pro era, and it died, and he had to have PowerPC hardware. It was like really high-end audio stuff that wasn't on Intel yet. And I found him like a refurbished Power Mac G5 and talked to Apple into sending it to him as a replacement, because we were going to replace his computer, but I could only replace it with a Mac Pro. And I, begged and pulled a bunch of favors to get this guy a G5 because that's what he needed. There's always going to be people at the edge cases, but I think for most consumers, and honestly, probably most power users, unless you're like developing or doing something really weird in the OS, it's going to be pretty invisible. Hopefully, if Apple does their job well.
I would love to know if any of our listeners are still using PowerPC hardware that they cannot update. I'd just love to know that. Now you said that, it's like, like how we had the people still using Aperture?
Yeah.
Right? Like, if for whatever reason, like, that is a thing, I would really love to know.
Yeah, let us know on Twitter. The show is at _ConnectedFM.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so, I mean, you use your iMac Pro a whole bunch. Is there anything that comes to mind for you?
No. Right, but, like, I don't... No matter what they put in, I don't want to upgrade to it, right? Like, this is... like, I'll say this forever, but my Mac is a tool for production. Like, I don't want the newest version of the tool. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There is nothing wrong with my Mac Pro running Mojave. Do not want to touch it. Like, I'm not going to upgrade to Catalina either. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just going to leave this thing on Mojave until I am forced to move. Like, I had to update like in the past, I've been forced to update because software that I need will they cut off, right?
Right.
I'll do it for that. Like if I needed to buy a new machine, right? Like I'm only on Mojave because it was all I could get on the iMac Pro, right? Like it wasn't running High Sierra, which is what I was on previously on my Retina iMac. So I just make sure I have the security updates, which they release. And that's another thing. Like if Apple are going to cut me off security update wise, then I'll move to something, right? Like I'll move to the oldest version of an operating system that I can get. But I just like to stay on the Mac where I am. Like there isn't anything in that is exciting in these new versions of the operating systems typically that brings me over. It's very rare that there'll be a feature on iOS that doesn't work on the Mac, right? Or at least with some compatibility. I'll hand it to Apple that they're pretty good with that, right? Like it's very rare that something is like completely broken. So yeah, I have no desire to move. So there's nothing that I want. I don't have that feeling about the Mac. There are like concepts and like ideas I think it would be nice for the Mac platform for them to implement. Like I said, like I would like to see Apple produce more of their own Catalyst apps, but like I don't care because I can't run any of the Catalyst apps.
Just the 4 that came in your system that are all bad.
Yeah, but like they're like the verse ones or whatever. But like, like I don't have the podcasts app.
Yeah.
Right? I still have iTunes on this thing and will for the foreseeable future. So like I would like to see it. I personally would really like to see an ARM transition happen just because I am really intrigued as to what that could do for the Mac. Mm-hmm. But it's not like I have a laundry list of features that I want to see like I would, for example, on iOS and iPadOS.
Sure, which are your primary drivers. So
yeah, that's where I care about things moving and changing and becoming more exciting. Because as well, also there is more to do, especially on iPadOS. There are actual things to be done. Like I don't know if many people are asking for the windowing paradigm to be rethought on the Mac. Like people are asking for there to be refinements to the multitasking system.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. Well, I think that does it.
Yep.
Feel good?
Yeah.
All right. If you want to find links to the stories we spoke about, head on over to the website, relay.fm/connected/297. While you're there, you can become a member to support this show directly. Thank you so much to our connected members out there. When you join, you get a bunch of cool stuff, including access to the Relay FM members Discord that we mentioned a couple of times during the show. You can also send us an email with feedback or follow-up. You can find us on Twitter. Of course, Myke is there as IMYKE. Myke is the host of a bunch of other shows here on Relay FM. Federico is off this week, but you can find him on Twitter at Viticci, Viticci. He's the editor-in-chief of MacStories.net, and he should be back with us next week, I think.
And the japes will resume.
Oh, boy. You can find me on Twitter as ISMH and my work at 512pixels.net, as well as a bunch of shows here, both places. Multifaceted media experience for me, if you want it. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Smile, Hello, and Zojo. Until next week, Myke, say goodbye.
Cheerio.
Adios.